Thank you, and welcome to the Patriots 300 Level Podcast. My name is Eric, and I'm running today's episode solo as Kevin, my co-host, is feeling a little bit under the weather the past few days. Part of the reason why this episode is being posted a little later than we normally do, trying to hold out hope he could come, but fortunately it's just me tonight, so we'll see how this goes. Welcome back for our 41st episode this week, where we'll be recapping last Sunday's game versus the Browns, previewing the Patriots' upcoming game Monday night versus the Chicago Bears, and discussing news around the NFL. As a reminder, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Pat's 300 Level Pod for up-to-the-minute updates and commentary on news of the day, as well as at our website at pats300levelpod.com. So just getting right into it for last Sunday's game versus the Browns, Patriots ended up winning 38-15. It was close in the first half. It was 10-6 after the half. Then the Patriots started to pull away. And then in the fourth quarter, it got a little more interesting, but ultimately Patriots had control for most of it. I'd say the story has to start with the defense forcing some turnovers, 2 interceptions, one by Kyle Duggar on the first drive, which started the Patriots off nicely. And then there should have really been a third interception. There was an incredible play by Marcus Jones on the sidelines where initially it was ruled incomplete. It was fourth down, or it was third down going into fourth down, where he made a really nice play on the ball. And it looked like he got both his feet in bounds, but it was a long throw where if Belichick challenged it, chances are it would have been overturned, but it was a close play that there's a chance it might not have been, and it would have just been the same result as a long punt anyway, so it wasn't really worth it. Then there was also 2 strip sacks by the Patriots defense, one which they recovered, one which the Browns did. And then there was a muffed punt, which Brandon Schooler ended up recovering as well. So ultimately, defense and special teams playing a big portion and forcing some turnovers, which helped the Patriots in the long run. Jacoby Brissett, as we said last week, he's not really going to win you many games as a quarterback. He's a good game manager. He probably won't lose you any, but the week before he kind of did for the Browns, and it was kind of what you're expecting from a Jacoby Brissett run offense. He was 21 of 45, so a 46% completion percentage, 266 yards, with a lot of those yards coming in the fourth quarter, kind of in garbage time. So his numbers look a little better than they really were. 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, 4 sacks, 2 fumbles, with 1 fumble for loss, and then a quarterback rating of 54.5. So he really didn't have a good game. But I think part of that, which I'll get into in a minute, was just the Browns coaches not putting the Browns or Jacoby Brissett in the best position to win this game. Coming into the game, the Browns had the best rushing offense in football, one of, if not the best offensive lines in football, especially in the run game. And then the best running back in football in Nick Chubb, and another really good running back in Kareem Hunt, who historically has done really well versus the Patriots. So you're expecting going into this game that the Browns were going to try running the ball a lot, and that was their key to the game. They came into the game averaging 192 yards per game running the ball, and they only really ran it with running backs 16 times, 12 carries for Nick Chubb for 56 yards, and Kareem Hunt 4 carries for 12 yards. And then in the first half, especially 8 carries for 30 yards for Chubb. So they really didn't establish running the ball, and part of that has to go to the Patriots defense, which they did a really good job of run defense. They gave some different looks that they haven't normally done, where they were running defensive ends over the guards instead of traditionally having defensive tackles, and having a faster, more athletic defensive look, which I think really helped them in this game. But also the Browns didn't keep running the ball, where the Patriots stopped them a few times and they kind of abandoned it. And they didn't really start off the running the ball much too. On that first drive, they threw it a few times, which led to the Kyle Duggar interception. But they didn't, you would have thought going into this game where the Patriots, they don't have the worst run defense, but that's been their weakness the last few years. Try and attack their weakness, go with your strength versus their weakness, which the Patriots have had a good pass defense this year. But they didn't do that. They tried to outsmart them, where they tried throwing the ball with a quarterback who's an okay game manager. So I didn't understand that. And this is something that when I was talking to Kevin during the game, is this is part of the reason why with the Patriots having Bill Belichick as their head coach, they'll always be in it. They'll always be in playoff contention because they're one of the most smartest coach football teams where more than half the teams in the league, they're just overthinking it and they play to lose the game, for instance. They overthink everything, where as us just looking into it, the Browns should have been running the ball the entire time. Even if you get stopped a few times, you just keep running it. Where in the second half, Chubb, I believe, broke one off for 16 yards. Even Ramondre Stevenson, which I'll get into in a minute. The first, I think his first 8 or 10 carries, he only had about 20 yards. And then he broke the 32-yard touchdown run where they just kept running it, even though it wasn't working. Not saying run the play over and over again, the definition of insanity, but you have to go with your strength, and the running is your strength. So I didn't get it, but ultimately it helped the Patriots. Another good thing for the Patriots defense was they limited the catches out of the backfield for the running backs, where Kareem Hunt is a really good receiving running back. He didn't have any catches, and then Nick Chubb only had one catch for 14 yards. Another really good point for the Patriots defense was they were excellent on third down. Previous week, they were excellent on fourth down, forcing the Lions to go 0-6. On third down, the Browns were 4 for 15. So I know that's been a weakness for the Patriots earlier this year in some games, and then even last year that was a big problem for them in key situations, third down especially, where some games they'd be good, but other games where you really needed to stop, they weren't able to get it. This game they really were. Part of it was since the Browns were throwing it so much with Jacoby Brissett, that kind of helped the Patriots as well. But really good stops for the Patriots defense. David Njoku did have some big catches, 3 catches, 58 yards. But Amari Cooper was what I was really concerned about going into this game, especially with Jonathan Jones being out. I figured that Jonathan Jones' style of defense, where he's more of a slot corner, he's good of covering the type of wide receiver Amari Cooper is. And with Jonathan Jones being out of the game, I was a little worried how they're going to defend him, but they did really, really good job. 4 catches, 44 yards. He did have a touchdown, but for a wide receiver of that caliber, shutting him out to only 4 catches, 44 yards is really impressive. So switching gears to the offense, Bailey Zappi, really, really good game. 24 for 34, 300 plus yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and then a quarterback rating of 118. Interesting stat after the game was that he's the only rookie in NFL history to have quarterback passer rating of over 100 in his first 2 starts. So really good job. This was first game when he played the Packers. Patriots really didn't ask him to do much. And you kind of saw that when he was getting pressure when they tried to ask him to do too much. He looked a little scared and nervous, which is understandable. It's his first game starting in the NFL, kind of thrown into it where he wasn't expecting to play, going up against a really good team in the Packers and a Hall of Fame quarterback and Aaron Rodgers on the other side. But each week he's looking better and better. He looks more comfortable. It looks like he's learning the offense more. They're still not asking him to do as much. They're running a more simplistic style offense, but it's working for them. And I think that's something where we saw last year when Mac Jones was the quarterback and he had a really good year. Part of it was more simplistic offense. And I think that's something with Mac Jones coming back, which we said this last week too. You kind of want to go more to that old style where you're not doing too much. I think it's good where you try and make the offense a little more complex, so it's tougher for defenses to try and stop you. But you want to go with more of those simplistic style as well, instead of just throwing deep, trying to throw those 50-50 balls, which led to some interceptions this year. But overall, Bailey Zappi looked really good. He wasn't pressured too much, which he did get sacked a few times. Myles Garrett had kind of threw just Isaiah Wynn off to the side, and then Isaiah Wynn ended up getting benched. But outside of a few plays by Myles Garrett versus Isaiah Wynn and a couple versus Trent Brown, Bailey wasn't pressured too much. So that also helped him having a really good game. He spread the ball around. 4 different receiving players had 60 plus yards. Devontae Parker, 4 catches, 64 yards. Hunter Henry, 4 catches, 61 yards. Jonnu Smith, 2 catches, 61 yards. And Jacoby Myers, 4 catches, 60 yards. So really good job spreading the ball around to the open man. And Zappy looks really good. I don't think, I know a lot of people are saying Zappy fever. And reports today were that there is no quarterback competition when Mac Jones is healthy. He's going to be the starting quarterback, which I agree with. He had one of, if not top 5 rookie seasons for quarterback last year. Part of the reason why he struggled a little bit this year was the first game, the offensive line wasn't that good. And even the couple games later, they weren't great. And he was getting pressured. It looked like he wasn't comfortable in the pocket. They installed a new offense where he was doing more, throwing more complex plays where he had to throw more 50-50 balls. So that kind of led to the inconsistencies we've seen this year that we didn't really see of last year. But with him getting healthy again, just understanding the offense a little more, and then also if you go back towards little more simplistic offense than last year, not saying go completely with the same offense that Bailey Zappi's running. But if you kind of go with those old school plays, I think that he'll be able to have a good job, or he'll take over where Bailey Zappi left off. But you'll also see the Patriots doing more on the offensive front than Bailey Zappi can do. Switching gears to the Patriots running game. This is something that going into the game, this was one of the highlights where Browns had the worst rushing DVOA in the NFL, where they allowed 200 plus yards to the Chargers the week before, and they just hadn't been good. Patriots running attack wasn't great. I think part of it was this is what the Browns practice all week was trying to stop the run, similar to what the Patriots did trying to stop the Browns running attack, where they knew they were going to try and hammer it down their throats. Where, like I said earlier, Stevenson, the first 8 or 10 carries only had 20 plus or 20-ish yards. But then he broke the 31-yard run for a touchdown. Stevenson ended with 19 carries, 76 yards, 2 touchdowns. Damian Harris was out, which I think hurt Stevenson a little bit and hurt the Patriots running attack, where even though they're both similar style runners, and Stevenson's very physical, I think having Harris splitting the carries keeps them both fresh, where they're able to keep turning their legs and breaking up more runs, especially after contact, where in this game he wasn't really able to do it by himself. And then Tyquan Thornton had 3 rushes for 16 yards, including a touchdown, which was very encouraging to see. Patriots offensive line, they were pretty good outside of Isaiah Wynn and a little bit of Trent Brown. Trent Brown, he was going up against Myles Garrett at some point, which kind of, Myles Garrett's one of, if not the best defensive ends in football. So he's going to get his at some point. Then Isaiah Wynn, once again, just looked terrible. His Pro Football Focus passing grade was a 5, which I've never seen anything that bad. He was just horrendous. He had another penalty once again, and then he was benched for Marcus Cannon. But the inside of the Patriots offensive line interior was really good, with Cole Strange not allowing a hit or pressure at all. Same with Michael Onwenu. David Andrews he allowed one, I believe it's either one pressure, one hit, but nothing much outside of that. One hit by Andrews. So the interior of the offensive line is definitely their strength, and that's great to see. And once again, it's been several weeks where the interior offensive line is just just performing excellent, and that's all you can ask for. Another really good positive from this game was the tight end production, where not this past offseason, the previous offseason, the 2021 offseason, Patriots spent big at the tight end market getting Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith. And last season, Jonnu had a very disappointing season. He wasn't very productive. Hunter Henry got off to a little bit of a slow start, but he ended up performing very well in the red zone, but that was it. This season, Jonnu has looked a little better, but still hasn't seen the production that he's being paid for. Then Hunter Henry was awful the first 4 weeks. Last week, things started to go his way, where he had, I believe, 4 catches, 45 yards. This week, though, both Henry and Jonnu had 61 receiving yards each. Henry had 4 catches and a touchdown. It really should have been 2 touchdowns. where there was one in the end zone where he was pushed out and he went back in and caught it. The ref said that it was illegal touching, but since he was pushed out, he should have been allowed time to get back into the play of field, but the refs didn't really allow it. So that's one where he really should have had 2 touchdowns, but overall still a very productive day for him. And then Jonnu Smith, he had the really big catch and run, which kind of showed some highlights of why, or glimpses of why the Patriots ended up signing him last year at big money, showing that's who they were hoping they'd be getting. And if you're getting production out of the tight end position, I know I said this in the preseason that Jonnu Smith is the X factor. It's going to open up the rest of the offense, open up the wide receivers, and then even running backs out of the backfield, where if you have 2 tight ends, it's potential mismatches versus linebackers, or if you put cornerbacks on them or things like that, it's going to open up the rest of the field. So if they keep getting production like that, that's going to be great. One negative was the penalties, where just for the Patriots overall, they had 12 total penalties, 9 on offense, with 5 of the penalties on offense being pre-snap, 4 false starts, and a delay a game. This is the second straight game where Bailey Zappi had a delay a game, and he really should have had one the week before versus the Packers as well. So that's one thing that he has to be a little more attentive to, is the play clock, because those are instances where you can't allow to get a penalty, get pushed back 5 yards. But overall, really good game for the Patriots. They weren't playing an elite team in the Cleveland Browns, especially with them not having Deshaun Watson yet, but it's still a very good win. And it's something that they can build on, keep building. They had an impressive game versus the Packers a couple of weeks ago, which I know they lost, but taking it into the end of overtime. Very big win against the Lions last week. Lions, even they came into the game with one of the top offenses in football, but again, they're the Lions, but they played really well. And then just to build upon that, where last year we kind of saw the same thing, where they had a couple impressive wins against some bad teams, and then they built upon that to go on a 7-game win streak, and they made the playoffs. And this is something that starting the year 1-3, they're going to have to do the same thing too. So that's another positive. So going into 3 up, 3 down for this week, number 1 is just Bailey Zappi. Really good game, 24 of 34, 309 yards, 2 touchdowns. He just has done everything you've asked of him for taking over for Mac Jones. He's not doing anything to lose the game. He's made some really big throws. He's been able to step up in the pocket and just find the open man. So really good game. And if this is his last start with Mac coming back, it's at least good that you have a competent backup that can, if something was to happen to Mac again, or if Mac really struggles or something along those lines, Bailey Zappi can take over, and you have confidence that the offense should be okay. Number 2 up is just the interior offensive line, which I mentioned earlier. No sacks allowed, and then no pressures or hits allowed by Cole Strange or Michael Onwenu. 1 hit allowed by David Andrews. Really good game. David Andrews also on the second touchdown run by Ramondre Stevenson had a really impressive blocking, where he blocked 3 different men to open up the hole for Ramondre Stevenson to get the touchdown. And my 3rd up is Matthew Judon. I know this is the first game this season where he didn't record a sack, but he was very impressive in the run game, which has been one of his weaknesses. He was able to shed the blocker to get the rusher. He was also very, very good at chipping the tight end during passing plays, getting some pressure, even though he didn't record a sack. So a very good game again for Matthew Judon as well. For the downs this week, number 1, once again, has to be Isaiah Wynn, where second straight week he ended up being benched for Marcus Cannon. 1 sack allowed, 1 false start, which is his 8th penalty in 6 games. And considering he's been benched in half the games, it's really 8th penalty in 5 games. Just something you cannot continue doing. And I don't know if Marcus Cannon is in football shape yet. I know he's been playing relatively well for a backup right tackle. I don't know if he's in football shape to play an entire 60 minutes of football, but if he is, or if he's getting close to it, that's something where it's getting to the point where you have to consider, is Marcus Cannon the best option, or is Isaiah Wynn? Where Isaiah Wynn, he's the reason, one of the main reasons Brian Hoyer got concussed and knocked out against the Packers, and then he allowed a big hit on Bailey Zappi later in the game, and he just keeps getting benched, and it's just you have to wonder, when is it time to switch. Number 2 down was Jake Bailey. He did have a couple good punts, but he also had some couple awful punts as well. And he had a really good first or second week, but I don't know what's going on. He was an All-Pro in 2020. He was bad last year, but I thought it was due to the injury. And with the Patriots signing him to an extension, I thought that was part of the reason why they felt comfortable extending him, was it was due to the injury. But he continues to be inconsistent, and for a team that prides themselves on the 3 phases of football, if he's not getting it done, that can be a big problem, especially in tight games later on in the season when you're playing up against some good competition. You can't be losing the field position battle, and right now it hasn't hurt them too much because they haven't played too many good teams the past few weeks. But later on in the season, if this doesn't turn around, it could be. All right, so that covers the Browns game. So switching gears to news around the NFL. First one I think we have to start off with is just the Ben Volen situation, which this is exactly what's wrong with the sports media, especially. I think it highlights what a lot of Patriots fans and people in New England feel about what's wrong with either the media covering the team for the beat reporters, or if it's people on the radio, where it's just journalism one-on-one. If you get a DM from someone you don't know, you want to make sure you vet it, which previous reporters in the past have gotten in trouble for, aka Ron Borges, John Tomasi. And B, in the DM, it says explicitly, I have a friend that works at Gillette in the season ticket department, where that should be strike 2, where you should know this guy has absolutely. How should someone in the season ticket department have any idea how the team feels about Mac Jones and his maturity? But since it fit his agenda, he just ran with it. And it kind of just shows what's wrong with the Boston Globe, what's wrong with sports journalists in general. And I think the impressive thing for me, maybe not impressive is the right word, but the thing that I thought was the best was when he initially came out with the report. Pretty much everyone in all the beat reporters were kind of refuting it, which was kind of surprising because usually they don't go against other beat reporters. But pretty much every single person was refuting it, even before it became known that who the source was. But hopefully, this is a learning. Just something that fellow beat reporters and just people in general, they learn not to do this, where you're trying to go for the hot takes. But it's just classic trolling Ben Volen. That's all I have to say on that. More news around the NFL. Bills last week beat the Chiefs, and in a close matchup where Josh Allen performed very well. Wasn't great in the first quarter, but overall, Bills and Chiefs are looking like the 2 top teams in the AFC, where the Patriots want to have success going deep in a playoff run this year, they're going to have to go through one or both of those teams. So right now they're the top 2 teams in the AFC, and until we see otherwise, we're just going to have to keep going with that. Kind of shocker was the Jets beat the Packers to advance to 4-2 on the season. Packer in Lambeau. Packers didn't play well. I don't know if it's just Jets had a really good game plan, or maybe the Jets are really better than what we're expecting this year. But for me, I think it's something to keep an eye on with them being 4-2. But until I actually see them play the Patriots, I'm still going with the fact that they're the Jets, and they're going to keep being the Jets until they prove me wrong. Another surpriser was Tom Brady lost to the Steelers, which going into the week, Brady has historically dominated the Steelers, going 12-3, and it was kind of surprising to see him lose to Kenny Pickett. Granted, it was on the road, but still losing 20-18. Offensive line was awful for the Bucs, and I can definitely understand Brady's frustration, which you saw on the sidelines, where he's pretty much trying to do it all on his own. If you look at the stats, it's going to look like he had a bad game, but he's still the Tom Brady of old, and you can only do so much with limited talent around you. And then I guess the last news around the NFL I wanted to touch up upon was Chargers barely beat the Broncos to go 19-6, or to winning 19-16 in overtime. Brandon Staley once again making some very interesting coaching decisions, and it's the second straight week where it didn't end up biting him in the butt. But they're 4-2 right now. They really should be 2-4, maybe worse. And I don't unless they go on a deep playoff run or Brandon Staley changes his coaching decision, they're really going to be in trouble in tight games as the season goes on, or in the playoffs, or he's going to make a stupid mistake to cost the team a win. And I don't know. I feel like if this was me watching the Chargers, if I was a Chargers fan, it would just drive me insane, the decisions he makes, where it's one thing to be aggressive, it's another thing to be stupid. And there's a fine line between aggressive and stupidity. And he's going over the line a lot. And that's something that, as a Patriots fan, having the Chargers in the AFC, that's a good thing, having a coach like that. But for football, I just don't understand it at all. All right, so that's all I have to say about news around the NFL. Switching gears to the Chicago Bears preview. I guess the number one storyline is going to be the quarterback matchup. Reports are Mac Jones is likely to play on Monday. His ankle at practice today looked like he had more weight on it. He was able to do much more. And assuming he's able to play, which I'm going with that assumption, it's the number 4 drafted quarterback in the 2021 draft in Justin Fields versus the number 5 quarterback in Mac Jones, where the Bears traded several picks to get Justin Fields ahead of Mac Jones. Justin Fields hasn't performed well this year. Part of it is he doesn't really have great wide receivers, with his best wide receiver being Darnell Mooney. He also has a very bad offensive line. His best game this season came against the Vikings 2 weeks ago, where he was 15-21, 208 yards, 1 touchdown, 0 interceptions. On the year, the Bears are only averaging 145 passing yards per game, and are averaging 10 completions on 19 attempts, which is the lowest for a team through 6 weeks since 1982, so 40 years ago. So another thing with Justin Fields is he is very mobile. He ran a very fast 40 at the combine. I believe it was 4.4, which is the highest, one of the highest 40 times for a quarterback. And that's something the Patriots are going to have to keep an eye on. Historically, they've had some trouble with mobile quarterbacks. I know this year they played Tua week 1. He didn't have any carries. They played Trubisky week 2. He only had 1 carry for 7 yards. But when they played Lamar in week 3, he had 8 carries, 110 yards, and a touchdown. And they played pretty well the first half against Lamar, but in the second half, I think part of it was just several injuries were piling up, and then also the defense just getting tired. But that's something where if the Bears are to have success, they're going to have to Justin Fields is going to have a good game, and that might include him running, just scrambling if a play breaks down, scrambling, getting a first down, and those can be killers, especially if it's third down, third and long, and then the quarterback scrambles and gets a first down. So that's something the Patriots pass rushers, they're going to have to make sure that they don't break containment, rush the passer, but don't run too far up where it creates holes that the quarterback can run through. Another thing with, like I was saying earlier, the Bears have a pretty bad offensive line. Fields is getting pressured at 46% of his dropbacks, which is the highest rate through the first 6 of the season, dating back to 2009, which is when that statistic was first measured. And we mentioned before, usually anything above 35%, part of it with Justin Fields is the offensive line for the Bears isn't that good. Another thing, though, is he holds on as well by holding on to it too long. And that's something that the Patriots, we've seen some good pass rush this season, more than we have in years past, with Matthew Judon having a really good year so far, Dietrich Wise having a really good year. And then also Christian Barmore, I know he hasn't had the production this year as he did last year, but he's also getting double and triple teamed, which is allowing players like Judon and Dietrich Wise to get pressure. So that's something where if the Patriots want to have success against Fields, You want to make sure you're able to rush the quarterback again without breaking containment, but that's something where maybe look to see Dietrich Wise having another good game again with Matthew Judon. Um, for the Bears running, they have the worst passing attack in football, at least statistically. They have the second best running attack in the NFL, averaging 171 yards per game, which is second only to the Cleveland Browns, who the Patriots played last week. With the 171 yards per game, 47 of them account from Justin Fields as well. Khalil Herbert has been their number one back this year, running for 402 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 6.4 yards per carry. Montgomery, in only 5 games, has run for 246 yards, 1 TD, and 4 yards per carry. So that's kind of their 1-2 punch, where the Patriots, if they want to have success on defense, they're going to have to make sure that they're limiting the amount of rushing yards that the Bears are getting, forcing them to throw and have Justin Fields try and beat you, similar to what the Patriots tried to do last week versus the Browns, where they stopped the run and forced the Browns to beat you through the air, which they weren't able to do. The receivers for the Bears aren't that great. Like I said, Darnell Mooney is the number one receiver. He has 17 catches for 242 yards so far this season. Cole Kmet is second in receiving, 10 catches, 116 yards. David Montgomery out of the backfield, 10 catches, 113 yards. St. Brown, 6 catches, 110 yards, and a touchdown. This is N'Keal Harry's. He was activated off the IR, and he's expected to play. So at least based on the wide receivers they have on the team, N'Keal Harry could be their number 2 wide receiver, and it could be a revenge game for him. I don't expect him to have a big game, just considering what we saw out of N'Keal Harry the last 3 years in New England. But the one thing with him was we did sometimes see those flashes where it would just be a great catch here and there. So maybe he has some extra motivation after not succeeding with New England. That might be some extra motivation for him. But you've always saw he had the talent to make highlight level plays. He just never was able to do it consistently. So hopefully for the Patriots, at least he doesn't have it continues this week, but we'll have to see. Switching gears to the Bears defense, they're third best in passing yards allowed per game with only 179. Part of those numbers might be a little bit skewed. They haven't really played too great of quarterbacks. They played Trey Lance week 1, then Rodgers week 2, which Rodgers is a great quarterback, but they're also don't really have a great receiving core. And then Davis Mills, Daniel Jones, Kirk Cousins, and then Carson Wentz. And Kirk Cousins, it was a 1:00 game, so it wasn't like they were playing Kirk Cousins on prime time. But the Vikings do have some good receivers, and so that's at least another good quarterback. But 4 of the 6 quarterbacks they played aren't that great, so that might be part of the reason why their pass defense numbers look so good. They are 8th best in the NFL in pressures per game, with 25% of quarterback dropbacks getting pressures, but they're the worst in quarterback knockdowns and hits, with only 4.2% of dropbacks. So they're getting pressure at a high rate of 25%, but they're not really doing much, only averaging 3 hits per game. For their run defense, they're 29th or 29th best in the NFL. So 4th worst, averaging allowing 163 rushing yards per game. So this is another game where you're expecting the Patriots to lead with their strength, and their strength is their running backs and their interior offensive line. And so I'm expecting a big game out of Ramondre Stevenson again. And Damian Harris, it looks like he's going to be back this week. He was a full participant in practice today. And so going with the 1-2 punch of Harris and Stevenson, expect the Patriots to try and run it down the Bears' throat, especially if this is Mac Jones' first week back. They might want to try and ease him into it a little bit. So keys to the game for the Patriots: stop the Bears' rushing attack, force the Bears to throw. But when you are forcing the Bears to throw, make sure you don't break containment and don't allow Justin Fields to scramble and get first downs and run the ball. And then their keys for the Patriots offense is to establish the run game. And establishing the run game will open up the play action. It'll open up the passing games while also giving Mac a little bit of time to ease into the game as well. Weather-wise, at least as of now, I know yesterday it looked like it was supposed to be raining Monday night. As of now, it's supposed to be 58 degrees, no rain, with winds 10 to 20 miles per hour. So it doesn't look like wind or weather will be too much of a factor other than maybe some wind. But again, weather might change, and if it does rain, that might be a contributing factor to how the Patriots play, especially if this is Mac Game's first game back and how depending on the stability of his ankle. Going into predictions, based on everything I just said, I think the Patriots will win relatively comfortably. I have them winning at 31-13. Kevin, I know he's not here, but he texted in the result or his predictions. He said if it rains, he has the Patriots winning 24-10. But if it doesn't rain, if weather isn't a factor, he has them winning 31-10. So ultimately, it looks like this should be a relatively comfortable win for the Patriots. It is at prime time. And they do have an extra day to prepare, but this Bears team doesn't really look that great. And hopefully, when we meet next week, we're talking about another Patriots win. And this should be another game where the Patriots continue to build upon what they've done the past few weeks to go on a 3-game winning streak and start to establish themselves as finding their strengths and going forward to go on some big win streaks to try and get them in playoff position. But that's all we have for today. Hopefully Kevin's back next week with me as well, so it's not another solo attack. But it was great talking to you guys, and we'll see you guys next week.